Alright, so here's what I did, besides drive myself crazy. I couldn't understand what was going on yesterday at the rehearsal. So, early this morning, in the dark, I got up and I came out here, and the first thing I did was test all the equipment out. And what I found was all of it, if I took the Mary Beth's microphone, which is very sensitive, and I put it here, if I put it into this board I'm using because it has effects. And the only reason it was there is because Stuart was whining that, Cliff should have some reverb on his thing. So I said, well, I have an extra one of these boards here, so it's an emergency board, so I'll put whatever we think should have a reverb and an effect on it. Before that, I was running the vocal microphones into this unit here, and it gives me lots of nice controls. It also has a small amount of effects, but I didn't have enough inputs on this unit, so I do have some reverb that I can control. And it is kind of nice to have two different effect settings so that you can decide, like if you want a different reverb or amount of reverb on the guitars. I could use that, and I could go ahead and put everything else in here. But the point is that was there. And then there's my big board, which I suspected had gone bad. So the first thing, I tried it, of course, the way it was last night, and we got all that buzzing, even with Mary Beth this morning. But then I disconnected my main board. It's off. And I took everything out, and I put it into this board. And then this board was jumped right into my regular amplifier. Whereas before, this board goes into this main here, and that one here goes into the main, and it hit the amplifier. So I took this out. Nothing changed. This could fool me because this board has more gain for the vocal microphones, and this board, we did have the bass vocal microphone plugged into it as well, and that's quite a long run from here all the way over to right there. And what that means is that microphone wasn't as sensitive in the system, so that didn't show up as much with the vibration. But when I pushed it a little bit, the vibration through this board was actually the same vibration if I took the gain up just a little bit more on this board. So I'm sitting there going, well, this one had the vibration, this one had the vibration. So then I took everything apart, and I took this board and I inputted directly into this board. I got this is a tube preamp. I took the tube preamp out of the way, and I took this board and I took only one of the outputs, and I put it only into one channel direct from this board, so the microphone goes in here, and then the output here is going right straight into my amplifier, my Crown amp. And the vibration in the vocals was still there. So that meant that no matter what, all three of these mixers were doing the same thing, or not doing the same thing, or not part of the problem. And you know, last week I pretty much had concluded that the snare vibration, and basically we're running at least 7 microphones, sometimes we're up to 10 microphones in our little room here. And even last night we were running 6 microphones altogether. We're live. And you know, so when I suspected it was still the snare, even though Align had made a repair to his snare drum, I still suspected it was a snare. So I asked Align to put his fingers up on that metal vibrating bunch of, it looks like a bunch of elements, heater elements underneath the snares. And he put his hand on it, and it didn't make any difference. So I said, oh shit, it's not the snare. But in fact, when I tried it last night, it still seemed to be the snare. And then I went ahead and I had Mary Beth sing, and I went over to the snare, and I put my hand up on those I don't know what they're called. They're just wires that are underneath. This is Elaine's line thing here. It's a big set of wires right here that make that snare sound. You know, but finally I put my hand on it just like he did, and it didn't change anything. The vocal distortion was still there. But it still seemed like it was the snare. Finally, after I eliminated everything else, and then I even went as far as only using one channel of the output from the crown amp and cutting off the one amp or the one speaker that's up here to see if maybe the speaker itself was blown and making a vibration. And then I switched the outputs, and I didn't run them both at the same time, and then I went ahead and pulled plugs over here, and I pulled plugs on this big thing here, and it didn't make any difference. So for the purposes of this video, I'm going to ask Mary Beth in just a minute to come in here, and I'm going to demonstrate something. I went out today, since I'm just not comfortable messing with other people's equipment, especially because I don't pretend to understand what a drummer wants to hear or how a drummer wants to set his equipment up. You know, I'm not an expert in drums. So I went out today and I thought to myself, well, maybe I never had that problem before. And Mary Beth kept telling me, you know, we didn't have that problem when we had the electronic set. It started when you brought in the drums. And I'm sitting there going, well, yeah, but the drums really aren't using any microphones, so how could that be that started? But you know, she was pretty insistent that it started when something changed with the drums that he brought in. And anyhow, I wasn't comfortable, so I went out today. And I used to have a really nice snare, and when I lent it to somebody, it never came back home. So I went out today and I bought this snare. I wanted to see, first of all, that's a metal snare, and I wanted a wood, so I bought a birch snare. And of course it's not had any issues with the adjustment that turns the snare on and off, the actual snare wires on and off over here. This one has a good one, and so did Elaine's. It's just the only thing that broke really was just a strap, which he made a very successful repair on. So anyhow, I didn't want to mess with his snare. It's his snare, and I don't know what I'm doing. So I went out and I bought another snare, and I messed around with the tension adjustment. This has, the way these work, this has a tension adjustment here. You can make these things tighter, and they don't vibrate as much when they're tighter. And then you can make them looser, but also you've got this lever, and it actually takes the whole thing loose, and away with centrifugal force, it's pretty far away from the thing, and the whole snare sound, the whole drum changes its sound. And what I found, there are differences in these drums. For one thing, when I bought this drum, they suggested that the drum has quite a ring to it, which is a surprise because I expected the opposite. I thought a metal drum would have more of a ring to it, and it actually doesn't. This one has a ring, so they said maybe your drummer won't like the ring, but if you use this 14-inch studio ring, and sure enough, it calms the whole ring down. So that's interesting. Now he's not using a ring, and anyhow, so I'm going to go ahead and first of all, I'm going to put this back on the stand, and we're going to test Mary Beth's microphone. Also, I bought an additional microphone just in case that was a problem. And you can never have too many microphones. And Mary Beth said it's a good idea so this is a 935 that she's got, and she actually liked the sound of the 835 that she borrowed. So I went out and bought an 835 today, even though I know everybody's got one and not a problem. But, if you're going to have it, now we can set an 835 up permanently, which Mary Beth seemed to think she even sounded better with the 835 than on her 935, which is a model up from the 835. But we can put Anita away from the PG58s. One of the things about the PG58s is they were an inexpensive microphone, and they're subject to finger noise when you're handling these microphones. And the Sennheiser is the next step up, and you'll notice that the handling noises from touching a microphone are really not anywhere near the cheaper Shure microphones that I've got here that really do things, so that it doesn't hurt me to have another Sennheiser microphone in the mix. When I do a lot of really good work, what I do to eliminate that, of course, is I use a set of condenser microphones, and then they're mounted. It's more than just a shock mount. It also isolates the microphone from the stand, and that way you don't get stand noises traveling up when you switch pages. In this case, I've got one here for the horn, and it's also on a suspension system here. So the inner ring is suspended from the outer ring to eliminate handling noise for the saxophone as well. Anyhow, I'm going to get Mary Beth out here. I'm going to mount this up, and we're going to show you what the results are here. All I want you to do, we've got a lane snare set up, and go ahead and sing loud into that.
All right, or talk loud. Oh, 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 oh.
Go ahead, so I get a good.
Oh, oh.
And back away from it.
Oh.
It reduced it, but it didn't make it go away. But when she's really pushing, okay, now I'm going to say something. Hello, test. Hello, test. Hello, test. Hello, test. Hello. It just distorts at different frequencies, more and less, according to how the drum is vibrating, how tight the drum heads are and stuff like that. Hello. Go ahead and say something again, just so they can keep that in their mind.
Oh, oh, oh.
Okay, now just hold that thought. I'm going to remove this from the room. Okay, go ahead and sing now.
Oh, 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 oh.
So,
Okay.
there's no vibration now.
Right.
Okay, and I'm going to... Hello, test. Hello, test. Hello, test. Hello. Okay, now I'm going to bring the other snare in. And what I ended up doing with this snare is I tightened. There's actually somewhere here where you can actually, there's a knurled nut here on the side of it. I don't know if you can see it, but you can tighten these things on the bottom of the snare. And I tightened them up quite a bit because in fact it also gave a problem very much similar to what was already here. And I didn't feel comfortable if Elaine had made a repair on his to tighten his head up. So I tightened this one up, and all right, now this one, that's about the happening. Okay, so we're still getting some snare rattle from those metal wires, but I tightened it up so there's less of it. Now go ahead and sing.
Oh, 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 oh.
Okay, so there's a slight amount of distortion, but not nearly as much. And I'll show you with this one, I'm going to go ahead and release. There's a release mechanism that allows those wires to go away. Go ahead and just hold a long note.
Oh, oh,
And now,
oh, 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 oh.
okay, do you hear any difference there? Not much, but it's nothing. Nothing is pronounced. And it's funny too, because when you're actually at the drum, you don't hardly hear any. Go ahead and.
Oh, oh, oh.
There's your vibrations back. Your distortion is back. Okay, we're all done. Hopefully that comes out on the recording. Bye. And we've only got one microphone on. The thing is, once I have all the board and all the other mics are turned on, that snare sound is picked right up. You know, and we had years ago built our own set that was really tuned down in this room considerably. I had baffles around this thing. There's this set of baffles back here that I had set up around our drum right here. This comes out, this whole piece over here comes out. It can be put around the drum. Because actually all of our other drummers were louder than Elaine. So it isn't a volume issue. It's just proximity of the snare itself to that speaker. You know, I'm sure there might be other ways of baffling that effect, but then you're not going to be able to even get in because I'd have to put something between the speaker and the drum set. And the other alternative is either to use the snare I bought and have less of a snare according to what Elaine wants to hear. And if that's the case, perhaps moving the whole drum set over into a different corner, because this particular speaker system is shut off over here in this corner, except, and no, it's totally shut off, and I've run the bass out of the bottom of that cabinet over there. So if the drum was over here, it would be a whole lot less influence from that speaker, but we do have this speaker over up here that's on. So who knows, but at least I know what this is, and we can clean it up quite a bit. So that's it. Oh. Try it one more time there.
Okay. Far away from the mic.
Okay,
How
well,
much farther away do you want?
I don't know, but you're.
Now I'm farther back.
Okay, hit it again, louder. Again.